Have you ever wondered how companies create and add loading screens while things load in the background? Well, stay tuned and I'll show you how they do that. Alright, so how they do that is with a system called multithreading. Now, when you do things like multithreading, you can have multiple things happening simultaneously. Now, the amount of things that can be happening at the same time will depend, of course, on the user's CPU. But at the end of the day, this is one optimization method that you can do to help increase the performance of your game, and that missing space started to annoy me. Just a little bit, just bugging me just sitting there. But essentially what the concept is that we do is, for a loading screen is, we create a new thread, start it up with the resource that we want to do. In our case, it would be the start of our game. Make sure there's no errors in it, and then add it in to the screen behind, of course, the actual loading screen that we're showing. Now, this might look a little complicated or convoluted, or however you want to think about it at first, but multi-threading is actually fairly simple. So I'm just going to close this project, and we'll have this one. And this right here is all we need. And in fact, at this point, it's even more things that you need in order to do multi-threading. So if I just remove everything in here, and everything here. So let's say that you have whatever going on inside of your ready function. So this could be loading your loading screen or whatever, right? Whatever you want happening. Now, if you don't specify or create new threads, everything will happen on the main thread. That's why eventually everything starts slowing down, because everything has to start taking turns. Because you can't run a method until something else finishes first, right? And that's where multi-threading comes in, because it allows you to run two of those methods or two functions at the same time instead of having to wait for one to finish. So all we do is we create a new variable. We can call it thread. You can call it whatever you want. But once we finish with the thread, it will be cleared up and gone. So just using this as a temporary variable like this is more than sufficient. It'll suffice. Now, once we have this thread, we need to actually start it. So to start a thread, we just get the thread that we want to start. In our case, we're using the variable that we call thread, and you call start. Now, this is going to take some arguments, as you can see here. First thing is the object that we want to start the thread on. And that's going to be ourself, because we're the ones who have the method that we want to call. The second argument is going to be the function name in the form of a string. So in my case, crazy stuff. And then that's all we need to run. We don't have to run anything else. But see, if we were to come in here and we were to print out the text in here, because we have an argument. If we were to come in here and run this, it's going to print null because it doesn't have anything. And null is the default that gets passed in as the argument. Now we can come in here, and if we made it a string, now it's going to print the word text. So we see it is running just as intended. It's just missing the actual argument. So how we pass those in is actually our next, the next parameter here of our start function. Now, this can only take one parameter. So that is the downside, if you want to think of it like that, in creating a thread. But there's a way around that, and I'll show you that in a second. But you can see we can come in here, we can pass in, say, banana, a string of banana. And now, when we call this with our string passed in, that's what it's going to print, and it's going to be banana that gets printed. Awesome, there we go, we see it down here. And last, we can add a priority. So as you see here, we can have a normal, low, and a high priority. And that's going to be effectively completely up to you on which one to do. By default, it's just set to a normal priority. And that's going to, of course, vary by project and what your needs are. Alright, now whenever you actually run a thread, we actually have to close it off. Or not close it, but end it, get rid of it, or free it up would be another term. Now, normally, we come in here and we go queue free, right? We queue it up, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to wait to finish, and that'll allow everything to, all of our threads and everything to catch back up and get back in sync. So once we do this, we have no more issues, and if you notice the error that we had down here at the bottom in our debugger, I'll comment that out again. If we were to run that, you see we're getting errors down here. Our thread object was lost while the thread is still running. Well, that's unfortunate. The thread object has been destroyed without wait to finish, having been called on it. And we don't want that because, as you see, we need to do some proper cleanup. So just having that in there is going to allow us to get rid of those errors and properly clean up our thread. Now, what if you wanted multiple text in here? Text, and it will say text 2. Well, you might initially come in here and just come in here and add more parameters, but that's actually going to cause an error in here because we can't convert our argument here into an integer, and if we tried with just one, we would run into an error of not having enough arguments, as you can see here. So what you actually need to do, if you have multiple arguments here, you can create an array. So we'll just call that text again and create an array. Alright, so now we can have banana, and we can have our other string of test. Now you see we can come in, we can get both of those. So that's how you're going to have to do it if you want to have multiple parameters passed into your function that you're using on a separate thread. Now what about when we return something? Now when you return something, normally you want to set that to a variable, to whatever comes out of our function. So if we go ahead and return, this is my return, nothing is going to happen. It's going to get returned, but we don't have any way of capturing it. So the secret to that is when it returns, it's actually captured right here when our thread finishes. So if we just create a new variable, I'll call it temp, we can print that out after we've captured it when our thread gets cleaned up. And as you can see, this is my return, gets printed down here. So that's how you set it. You just set your wait to finish to a variable, and that's how you'll capture whatever is returned, whatever is output from it. Alright, I hope that helps you guys in optimizing your code, and maybe even speeding some things up, maybe even having problems. But I hope that helps you in your journey. If you have any questions or help that you want to see done on the channel, go ahead and leave a comment down in the description, and I'll see you guys next time.